Imagine sitting in a job interview and you're asked a behavioural question that you suddenly realise you don't have an answer to. A lot of applicants might simply freeze in a situation like this and not know how to get themselves out of this situation. Now remember, a behavioural question is where the interviewer asks you to give an example where you've shown a specific skill or quality in the past. And it will be a skill or a quality that relates to the role you're interviewing for. So what do you do if you find yourself having a mental blank in the middle of a job interview? Well, the first thing is, don't panic. We don't want to let one missed answer affect the rest of your interview performance and potentially risk not getting the job because of it. You need to compose yourself and take your time. It may very well be that you do have an answer, but you just can't see it in the moment. We really need to understand, is this genuinely a situation where you do not have an answer to the question? Or could it be that you simply don't understand the core competency that's being asked about in the question? In other words, you haven't fully understood what the question is asking. If that's the case, just politely ask the interviewer if they would repeat the question. This will buy you a little bit more think time. If it turns out that you understand the question and you do not have an example that you could share, we need to have a strategy to deal with this. Now we need to try and avoid the, sorry, I don't really have an answer for that approach. Let's look at 3 steps we could take to help get us out of this situation. The first step is to try to defer the question for later in the interview. Politely ask the interviewer if they would mind if we came back to that question later. Now, if they're not having that, we need a second step that we can take. If they are happy to defer the question to later in the interview, fantastic, we can move on with the rest of the questions. Now, if the interviewer is not happy with that and they're not prepared to defer the question, we can't buy ourselves a little bit of extra time, then we need to look at the second step in getting ourselves out of this situation. And that second step is to think about a similar situation that you might be able to share. A situation or an example that has similar skills and qualities to the ones in the question. You might explain that you understand the question and you're sure that you've experienced that in the past, but you're having trouble remembering or recalling a specific example that you could share. Would it be okay if I share a similar example? If the interviewer is not happy to hear a similar example, we need to move on to our third step in the strategy. If they are happy to hear a similar example, great. It's much better that we provide some value than no value at all. So let's go back one step and assume that the interviewer is not happy to hear another example. So we have to rely on the third step. The third step is to acknowledge the question, explain that you understand why that particular skill or quality would be important for someone fulfilling the role, and then briefly, concisely proceed to explain what you would do in a situation like that, how you would use that particular skill and quality if you were fulfilling the role. Now, of course, we want to avoid this situation from ever happening in the first place, and to achieve that, preparation is going to be key. It's very important that you know the position requirements intimately and that you've looked at your experiences and identified different parts of those experiences that could be used to address those position requirements. But if you do find yourself in a job interview where there's a question you simply don't have an answer to, think about that 3-step process. Can you defer the question? Can you offer an example that's similar to the one being sought? Or do you need to explain what you would do in a situation like that? I hope that information was helpful for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Have you ever found yourself frozen in a job interview? Or do you have any questions or comments? What are your thoughts on that 3-step process? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. I'm Russell from Interview Mojo. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.